This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Huss and Reem with you for the next couple of hours, and we got a lot to talk about. Big night last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Huge story out of Colorado with Val Nichushkin shortly before game time being announced that he had failed the drug test and is going back into the player assistance program in stage 3 and will be suspended for 6 months. And then obviously an affected Avalanche team that had 4 shots through the midway point of the game, losing and going down. We'll talk about the series as well as Carolina staying alive. And a big one tonight between the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks, with Cal Pickard going in net over Stuart Skinner, and McDavid and Draisaitl starting the game on different lines. Of course, closer to home, the Winnipeg Jets head coaching search continues, and Frank Saravelli reporting that the Jets meeting with Craig Berube today. We'll talk about that as well. And of course, there's lots to talk about in and around the Canadian Football League. Justin Dunk is going to join us first up today. Then we'll dive into a little bit more on the Jets coaching search and more locally with the club with Mike McIntyre. And then later on in the show, I'm looking forward to having Lyss Houde on. And you probably remember Lyss doing work with the Game Over gang, doing some post-game stuff. She's popped on KNR beforehand, has done a bunch of Jets commentary on CBC. Really looking forward to having Lyss on. We're going to get her thoughts on the Jets offseason and the end of the year. But we're also going to pick her brain on the PWHL. What an incredible season that league has had. They're in the playoffs right now with Toronto and Minnesota playing, Montreal and Boston playing. And this is actually going to be hosting an event for game 1 of the finals later on this week or next week, whenever it begins, over at Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke. So we're going to do all that as well. We'll get to the Coolbet line, some big news in golf as well, heading to the PGA Championship, which begins later on this week. Jeff Feinberg can't have major week on WST without having a visit from Feinberg. He'll join us tomorrow for some picks and analysis of the second major of the year. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, welcome to everybody in chat. Great to have you with us. Hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. Huge welcome to all of our podcast listeners listening on the audio feed. And, of course, a big welcome to all the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen each and every day. The gang at Coolbet Canada just finished up the lock shop with Jake Bowen Moss. You can check that out later at the Edmonton Sports Talk feed. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Rollies Transfer, Canadian Club, Little Brown Jug, Modern Man Barbershop, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke, connected to Good Neighbor, Gold Eyes, who won their first game of the season, and it did it in spectacular fashion yesterday, 60-0. They're finishing up their season in Cleburne as we speak right now. Assiniboia Downs, opening day next Monday, and of course we'll get to a Breezy Bend golf report looking at the PGA Championship a little later on today. And, of course, a Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get Michael Remis in here. And, Remo, good to see you last night, and good to see so many of our favorite chatters and supporters down at TCB last night for the Kenny and Rennie year-ender bender. Another great party put on by the fellas. Appreciate the hospitality, and great to see so many familiar faces and familiar names from the WST chat.
Yeah, this Kenny and Rennie year-end party 2 weeks or a week after the Jet season has become, well, 2-year annual thing, and great seeing so many people there. Had a great time, a lot of great food. Here's a picture of Connor put out there on social media last night. So yeah, great to meet so many people, and experience all the great food there at TCB. So I had a great time, and we had the games on as well. So that was cool too, being able to watch. It's a lot less stressful when it's not the Jets. I mean, it's kind of just on in the background, but you're kind of oohing and ahhing when Wyatt Johnston starts scoring goal after goal there for Dallas.
You know what? Just this picture, great picture by Connor. And thank God Connor took a pic, because I don't think Kenny or Rennie took a pic. And that's why Kenny put up Connor's photo with photo credit as well. But awesome to see Connor. Lyss was there as well. She's going to join us later on. So many regulars in the chat. I see Jet Oil Tom's there. Matt Hyman, great to meet Matt for the first time. Of course, Phyllis. All caps Kyle. He had to bust a little early because he's had his babysitter jamming on them. But anyways, it's always fun for everyone to get together. And I think our next chance to do that will be at the ballpark. And we're going to do that for a little WST patio party for a Gold Eyes game. Team's coming back next week. We're going to sit down and figure out but it'll be next month at some point. We'll do it just during the week, so people that go away on the weekends can still make it out. It should be fun. And as they say, you mentioned, the Gold Eyes just had such tough luck playing against a really great Cleburne team in this first series. Lost on a walk-off homer one night, 5-4. They lost 1-0 the next day. It all came together yesterday, a 16-run explosion. Hopefully that can carry on into the finale this afternoon. We'll keep our eyes on that. But Reem, as we mentioned, we were there at TCB last night enjoying some great pizza and a few pops, paying attention to what was happening between the Rangers and Carolina, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the news that everybody was talking about broke while we were there. The failed drug test and suspension of Val Nichushkin for the second consecutive year, leaving his team in the middle of the playoffs. And it was very clear that affected the Avalanche in a big, big way. The shots were 22-4 Dallas midway through the second period. They were already missing Devon Taves, who was out with illness, and then compounded with, with the Nichushkin news and the baggage I think that brought to the club, knowing that he had left the club in the playoffs last year, had left the club in the player assistance program earlier this year. And listen, I know people have many different takes on it. It is a serious problem, addiction. And I mean, you hope that this guy gets the help that he needs and straightens it out in his third chance, because he's very close to blowing an incredibly promising National Hockey League career. I do wonder about his future with the Colorado Avalanche, because you need to have people that you can count on in these big moments. And obviously they counted on him a lot against the Winnipeg Jets. But it's just a massive blow for Colorado, who are already up against an excellent Dallas team who put a stranglehold on that series last night with their win led by Wyatt Johnston, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I was, saddened to hear this news, Huss. I mean, he had such a great series here in Winnipeg, scoring in every game, just, using his big body to dominate offensively. And he's really resurrected his career in Colorado. 18-19, he had 0 goals in 57 games, 10 points with Dallas. And, since then, especially the last couple of years, he's broken out to, 50 points and 52 and 62 and 21-22 was his real breakout season on their way to the Cup. And he had some, as you said, he had to leave the team before. There's some questionable activity going on. And, to hear that he's put into player assistance for the third time, and he's going to be suspended for 6 months. Just hope that he's able to get the help that he needs. But as far as the Avalanche, they signed him to an 8-year, $49 million contract after they won the Cup. We'll have to see how this works out going forward. But I think the first step for him is getting back out of the program, and they'll have to reevaluate that in 6 months. And you saw last night, they're already missing Landeskog. They've managed that all season. This is a big blow to their team, and trying to, get a return to the Stanley Cup final. Playing a very good Dallas team, and It did not go well for Colorado, and now they're down 3-1 in the series.
Yeah, and listen, if you heard the interviews of the players afterwards, I mean, this team was shook by this, and I think that there was a combination of, I mean, listen, shock about the game and the way things went, and the fact that they were down 3-1, but finding out basically at the same time all of us did, just an hour or so before puck drop, I think really did affect the club, but also the fact that they've been through this before. And listen, everyone's going to react differently. I mean, I think, as I mentioned right off the bat, you do need to think about the person here. And listen, what happened last year, the circumstances with his initial visit to the player assistance program was surrounded by some very, very sketchy circumstances. I'm not sure, about number time 2 or exactly how things went down with the failed drug test in this case. But there is a level of trust that I think some players feel was broken. I mean, they talked to Jack Johnson, who's around as just generally one of the most positive, upbeat, nice guys around. And all he would say was that he made his choice. I'll leave it at that. He made his choice. Cale Makar was, less direct about it, but you could really see that he was deflated. And listen, I know there was plenty of cracks from Jet fans talking about yesterday. I would be lying if I didn't think the same thing. Like, if only this happened a month ago. But honestly, it's not really something to joke about. But he was an absolute jet killer. We saw how impactful he can be in a series with what he did in round 1. And the fact that he's not going to be there moving forward and wasn't there for them last night in a game they absolutely had to have, I think really has hurt Colorado's chances of moving on to round 3.
Yeah, I think, I was listening to Elliot Friedman with Jeff Merrick, and he's like, you're going to have a lot of opinions on this. I think part of you is like, you want to see him get help that he needs and get better. But I think the competitive side of you is like, hey, we're a team here and we're trying to win the Stanley Cup. We need you to be all in with us. And and when you hear a guy like Jack Johnson say he made his choice, I don't want to put words in it, but it's like saying, hey, he made his own decisions and, he's not all in with them and he won't be, for the next 6 months. So we'll see what happens going forward. But yeah, this was a big topic with everyone last night, just because, well, one, he's a big player for them, but he was so dominant against the Jets.
He took over that series.
It came like a bit of a shock that you thought he was over whatever issues he had. Clearly he's not, and you hope that he's on his way to getting healthy for when his return, whenever that may be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I talked to Will Paterson, who, if you recall him being on the program just before the series started, sort of talked about Nichushkin in a way, like I think a lot of us just are outside of the market sort of remembered, he had an issue earlier this year. He was away for a little bit, but he came back. He's playing really well. You don't really think of that, but it was still a little bit of cloud. There was a bit of a cloud around Val and the team with his status, and Will mentioned that. And when I talked to him just through some messages last night, he mentioned how the entire arena was stunned. I mean, people were literally finding out in real time as the team came out for warm-ups and dropped the puck about what had happened. And again, this wasn't out of the blue. This is the third time in a year for Nichushkin. And I got thinking, I mean, a guy like Nate McKinnon, who is so all in and so dedicated, famously 24/7, 365. You wonder what that relationship will be like if he is able to come back at what point, and whether the Avalanche, maybe potentially look to move on from him if they have to wait to do it. I mean, you already saw there was plenty of talk about, whether they had the opportunity to void his contract. I don't think that will be the case, and that's certainly not what the CBA is made to do. They won't have to pay him, but it does put, just from a business standpoint, which you have to talk about when you're dealing with the NHL and the salary cap and the team moving forward. While he'll be off the books while he's suspended, when he comes back out of the program, presumably is reinstated and activated, you have to have the space. So I mean, this isn't like an LTIR position where, you can sort of fudge the numbers and the guy's gone and, maybe we'll see in the playoffs. This is very different right now. But first and foremost, I mean, a sad story that is really affected the Avalanche. And as I said, Val Nichushkin now three visits to the player assistance program, and this one at an absolutely terrible time for him, for his career, and obviously for his team. And as we mentioned, Remo, it sucked the life out of the Avs last night. And credit to the Dallas Stars for taking full advantage of the opportunity to get up 3-1 and steal both games in Colorado, where the Avs were the best home team in the National Hockey League this year.
Yeah, they've been so good. That's the Avalanche at home, and they really steamrolled the Jets. And you kind of thought, okay, this team's destined to go back to the Cup final. Not quite. Miro Heiskanen, he's been incredible. 3 points last night for Dallas. They're 1 win away from the West Final. The story Wyatt Johnston as well. 2 goals, 1 assist. How old is he? I believe he just turned 21. He's been playing on the third line for them all season. He's moved up and down. Pretty incredible stuff. Incredible story for him. Stripping Cale Makar and helping set up one of those goals. So well done for Dallas. I think they're on their way. I think they're going to beat Edmonton or Vancouver and make it to the Cup final. But first you got to get there. But they've had an amazing season, has finished first. And here they are, again, 1 win away and doing what a lot of us thought was impossible, slowing down the Avalanche, who just looked incredible here in Winnipeg.
I'm just looking at these the scoring leaders right now. And I mean, Draisaitl and McDavid, they have these crazy numbers. I mean, 18 and 17 points in 8 games. Much of that, at the hands of the Los Angeles Kings. Zibanejad, Barkov, Tkachuk, Evan Bouchard, all at 13. And then there's Trocheck, Rantanen, and McKinnon. You mentioned Miro Heiskanen, though, Reem. And assuming that Dallas wins this series, you can definitely make an argument that if we were doing like midway point Conn Smythe voting, people that have been paying attention to this Dallas Stars team, I think would give a lot of love to Miro Heiskanen. The amount of time that he's playing on the ice and the high octane shifts that he's taking. I mean, this isn't a guy that's just sort of standing around for 20 of the 30 minutes. I mean, he's been their offensive catalyst throughout the playoffs. And, honestly, I mean, all the players that I just mentioned that are above them in scoring, if, they go to the Cup final, they'll certainly get consideration. If Dallas goes, though, I think there's a clear guy leading the way for the Stars, and that's Heiskanen.
Yeah, and you look at the teams who are built to win a Stanley Cup, you need that alpha 1A defenseman. Edmonton, Bouchard, Vancouver, Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox with the Rangers, Boston with McAvoy. But Miro Heiskanen, he's up there, maybe a little underrated because he's in Dallas, but he's certainly an elite defenseman. Again, 11th in playoff scoring right now. Plays big minutes for them. I'm kind of curious because it's funny. You look at the top scorers right now. Edmonton's got their 3 guys, 1, 2, and 3. Florida's got some top guys, but Dallas, who's maybe one of the Cup favorites right now. You got their defenseman as their top scorer, and Wyatt Johnston, a 20-year-old third line forward there. It's pretty impressive the way that they've done. You talk about balanced scoring. Jason Robertson, I guess he's 1 point away. He's up there as well. But I mean, Dallas, they've got 3 solid defense pairs, 3 great forward lines as well. They're set up, and it starts with the back end. We have that alpha dog defenseman.
Hey, is the I see you're on NHL.com. I'm on the ESPN. Does that have time on ice?
Let me zoom out. Yes, it does.
He is playing 27 minutes a game.
Yeah, that's
27:04. I mean, far and away the most in the league. Cale Makar is next at 25:45, and then Evan Bouchard at 24:40. But 27 hard minutes a night for Miro Heiskanen. He really has been something else. Moving on to tonight. Just before we get to the Jets coaching news, Edmonton, Vancouver, and I'll be honest, I was stunned to hear that Knobloch is going with Pickard tonight over Stu Skinner. I know he hasn't been good enough, but man, if this goes badly at home for Edmonton with the backup goalie in, and they're down 3-1, having to go back to Skinner in Game 5 in Vancouver with that crowd 1 game away from eliminating the Oilers, I think there's the potential that this one could really blow up on Edmonton. But it's desperate times. They're going to the backup, and they're splitting McDavid and Draisaitl up tonight.
Yeah, I don't know if I was too surprised. They pulled Skinner there, Huss, at the end of last game, and he hasn't been good. I don't know how much confidence you can have on this guy when, the Vancouver Canucks are coming down and scoring on shots with like under 10% expected goals. I mean, he's letting in bad goals. I think they're also concerned maybe, or Kelly Houde was talking with us, his reaction after letting them in. It's, usually, you just brush it off and go ahead, but he just hasn't had any playoff success going back a couple seasons. And I don't know if Calvin Pickard's going to be, you don't think he's going to be much. Sorry, I just don't think they feel like, hey, it's not going to be much worse than what it's been. We need to make a save.
Point.
We're in position. Like, could he
It's
really?
got to be a lot better, though.
It's got to be a lot better. Like, his ceiling may not be there, but like, he's probably going to come in and make a couple saves. I mean, you see Vancouver with their third string guy stealing games for them. Why not Calvin Pickard? But I agree, it's a desperate time. They're relying way too much on that top line, which is why they've separated them. They're also speculating going on 11-7 today. There's an injured D, and I know a lot of Vancouver media are posting videos of Elias Lindholm and Dakota Joshua running at Matthias Ekholm. They think Ekholm is the one that's injured, and if he was injured, that would be a huge blow.
That would be a disaster for Edmonton.
We'll see what the they'll see what the lines are, but they were going with RNH, McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl. He's been banged up too. So I don't know. I think Edmonton, they're in a tough spot. I think they can certainly capable of winning, and they're going to need some saves from their goalie going with Pickard tonight.
Listen, we're going to get to all this, but quickly, let's pivot over to the news today. Frank Saravelli, Remis, reporting that the Winnipeg Jets meeting today with Craig Berube. Now, I believe this was originally reported as Craig Berube is here in Winnipeg, but there's been an update, and it sounds like this interview, at least to start, has been virtual via Zoom.
Yeah, that's right, Huss. Frank, this is that time of year, Huss, where we're just itching for any insider report. Like, I remember reminds me of like the Trotz Watch era, even last year, any nugget. So, I'm listening to Elliot and Darren Dreger put out some information yesterday. Here's Frank's turn. He tweeted this morning, 10:45, and I quickly made Craig Berube the thumbnail of this video on YouTube.
Done.
Sounds like Craig Berube is scheduled to be in Winnipeg to interview. And then he adds, after significant time spent with the Leafs, Devils, and Sens, he is the most in-demand coach this hiring cycle. Could he steer the Jets away from Scott Arniel, who we've noted is the favorite? And then Frank updated less than 2 hours later. Quick update, believe this interview with the Jets is virtual via Zoom, not physically in Winnipeg. And I don't know what to make of this. Other than, I see a lot of people in the comments making lame jokes, but maybe they're not as serious as indicated by an in-person meeting, or I don't know, maybe it's just 24 hours. You know what? Like traveling, I kind of sucks. I don't know. Like maybe he lives closer to Toronto, and they're just like, we can just do this virtually and not waste our time. But maybe it's not in the serious stage, if serious at all. I don't know about you.
Well, yeah, listen, obviously, you're not hiring a coach from a Zoom meeting. Maybe if things go really well and there's mutual interest on both sides, they get together in person here in Winnipeg or somewhere else and talk about it more. We'll wait to hear what comes out of it. Berube's an interesting name, and he seems to be at the top of most of the coaching lists. And I'm just going to put this out to the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. For everybody that's with us live in chat, But if the Winnipeg Jets hired Craig Berube, is that a thumbs up or is that a thumbs down? Is that a guy that you would want to be coaching Winnipeg? Like I see a lot of the characteristics of Berube that I would like to have in a coach. I mean, a guy that played, a guy that was tough, a guy that I think brings that level of intensity that you hope the team becomes. I keep on looking at Vancouver and just seeing what they've turned into under Rick Tocchet. And I think there's a lot there in Craig Berube. And of course, listen, he won the Stanley Cup. He's a Stanley Cup champion on that miracle, incredible run in 2019 with the St. Louis Blues. But I mean, other than that, he has won one playoff series in his career. I mean, they won the championship in 2019. You know, he was the coach for 2 years in Philly, lost in round one and missed the playoffs that other year. And then lost in the first round in 20, lost in the first round in 21. Last year won a round and was bounced in round two. So, I mean, it's so hard to say, like, what kind of a coach is just going to get you over the hump and take a good regular season team into a good playoff team? That's a very difficult question to answer. But it does seem like there's a lot of teams that are interested in Berube. And at the top of his resume is taking the St. Louis Blues on that miracle run, which started off with that series against the Winnipeg Jets and ending playing Gloria and a trashed Brett Hull yelling, "We went Blues," to everybody there gathered in St. Louis. Anyways, Mike McIntyre's coming up a little later on. We'll talk more about Berube, the Jets coaching search, and get his thoughts on the Stanley Cup playoffs. But in just a minute or so, we're going to get to some CFL talk. There's lots going on as camps are open around the league. Justin Dunk is going to join us. Before we do that, huge thanks to our friends at Rolly's Transfer for the great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Rolly's Transfer, family owned and operated for over 60 years and the most trusted name in the moving game here in Manitoba. Very well connected is Rolly's with their logistics business throughout southern Manitoba, meaning they've got multiple routes, flexible times, and bottom line, great prices for moving needs all around southern Manitoba and, of course, right here in Winnipeg. Check out their new website at rollys.com, Rollys. You can find out the Rolly story, background, all their services. But up at the top right, there's a request a quote feature. So you simply go on there, let them know when you're moving, what you need done. They'll turn it around quickly with a quote to you and then take a lot of the stress out of what is always a stressful time moving. Rolly's Transfer, Manitoba's most trusted name in moving services for over 60 years. Find out more and request your quote today at rollys.com. Our friends at Consolidated Supply are getting ready for a big, big weekend. Not this weekend with the long weekend, but they're having a massive spring sale on the 24th, 25th, and 26th. With it all, irrigation services and products, hot tubs, golf carts, you know that they're the leaders in all of those. And of course, small engine parts and repair. They've also got amazing outdoor kitchens as well. If you've never been to Consolidated Supply, you got to check it out. And that would be a perfect time to do it. Might even pop down there and do a little on-location show on that Friday. I'm hoping to make that work. But in the meantime, get down to the showroom anytime. But 24th to 26th, the big Consolidated Supply Spring sale is going to be going on. 1395 Niagara Road East. And of course, you can find out more online at cte.ca. Yeah, well, if you're getting one of those golf carts, you're going to need a battery. You're going to need batteries for your boats, your trucks, everything that'll be keeping you occupied and having fun throughout the summer. And of course, when you're needing batteries, Manitoba Batteries, the spot. Shop local, get the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores every single day. And better yet, even now with 2 locations, including the newest store on Dovercourt Drive in the south end of the city, you will be able to get those batteries delivered to you for free anywhere inside the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Check out the great deals right now in the spring sale at manitobabattery.com. pop by and see him on Logan Avenue or Dover Court, or give him a call for free delivery citywide. And just before we bring in Justin Dunk, fellas, if you need to take care of that look, get on down to one of 8 Modern Man barber shops and get a nice cut for the long weekend coming up. Of course, Modern Man, as I mentioned, 8 locations in the city of Winnipeg, including the newest locations on Plessis Road and Pembina Highway. Great haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, more. All the product that you need as well. Easiest way to make an appointment is to book your look at modernmanbarber.com. You can also follow them on Instagram over at Modern Man Barbershop. All right, let's welcome in Justin Dunk to Winnipeg Sports. So we've got a lot to talk about with JD as training camps are open around the Canadian Football League and some big stories in the league. Dunk, what's going on? It's great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm just trying to keep up with all this, Hustler. This might be the most drama-filled start to CFL training camp since I've covered the league for, about a decade now.
Yeah, no, there's no shortage of storylines that we'll get to in a minute. Hey, just before we do that, though, some congratulations are in order. You are now part of, and this won't be very popular here in Winnipeg, but I'm always happy when legit friends of ours spread their wings. You're going to be part of the Riders broadcast this year. Fill us in on, that new part of the Justin Dunk's ever-expanding portfolio.
Thanks, man. I'll keep it quick because it's a Winnipeg-based show, but essentially what's going on is the Rider radio rights holder, which is 620 CKRM, has those rights exclusively, and they want to build out some content around it from a video perspective, similar to what you've done with your show, Hustler. It's not going to be every day, but for the games for 3 hours, I'll be the host, and for post-game for, around 90 minutes, there'll be a live video stream. At home games, we'll have a nice desk set up in the stadium. And then away games, I'll be doing it remotely. Wes Cates will be alongside post-game. And leading into the games, I want to give a real perspective on what's going on around the CFL, and also obviously break down the Riders and the teams that they're going to be facing. And, the first game that the Bombers and the Riders have this season is a preseason game that's coming up here on Monday, May 20th. So it'll be a great test run for us, but that's the idea right now, and full credit to Harvard Media for taking a chance with this product, because I think it can be something that sort of sets the standard around the league. It's a high bar, but I want to set it high, just like we've done at 3 Down Nation. I think just like you've done with your show here as well, my man. So those are the deets. And if you're ever in Regina, you have a standing invitation to come on that pregame show.
Well, we'll definitely make that happen, hopefully early in the pregame show, because there will be plenty of other pregaming that happens before. Are you there now, or is Regina going to be home base for you throughout the year?
No, it won't be home base. I mean, they've been kind enough to let me stay in Southern Ontario. So I'm going out for training camp here on May 17th, and I'll stay out there until the 26th through the 2 preseason games. Then I'll be in and out for home games throughout the year and covering the team as well as I can, especially leading into and after the games.
Well, and just speaking of that, of heading out to Regina, we had a big event here in town with a lot of our listeners, along with our pals Kenny and Rennie. And there was a lot of talk about the that Labor Day bus that is happening. If you want to get on that Huss bus, again, it's at the 1930 Crew. Send a DM for details and book that. It sounds like a lot of people are jumping on, and we're going to have a lot of fun Labor Day weekend. So we'll definitely look forward to seeing you then. As far as training camps go, I mean, listen, let's just start off your take on everything that's transpired with last year's MOP. Chad Kelly, his 9-game suspension, showing up at practice when training camp opened, how the Argos handled it, and just the fallout of this.
So much to keep up with, man. I mean, there's a lawsuit, there's the CFL's decision and ultimate discipline with the suspension. Chad Kelly could still appeal it. And then, as you mentioned, I'll call it the fiasco that happened before main training camp even opened. I just can't comprehend how the Argonauts or Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, who are usually buttoned up on these things, felt like it would be a good idea to have Chad Kelly on the field the same day that they knew media was going to show up, because, to be quite honest, usually there's no media or very little media at Argos practices. before Michael Pinball Clemens was going to address the media. Now, full credit for somebody from the Argonauts organization, and in this case, Pinball, for actually going in front of reporters and cameras and microphones and answering questions on this. But I think the smarter move for the Argos would have been to put out a statement, to have Chad Kelly focus on what he needs to do to get reinstated by the league. Because to be quite honest, he can appeal this all he wants, but Randy Ambrosie and the league office ultimately have to reinstate him. I think that's one thing that's being missed here. The other thing is that it's a minimum of 9 games, but he has to go through what the league has laid out just to have a chance, Hustler, to be reinstated. So right now, for all intents and purposes, at least from my perspective and based on the league's wording, he's not a part of this league. Now, yes, he can appeal to discipline, but I don't see the CFL relenting on him having to go through some of these processes, including meeting with a gender-based violence expert, to have a chance to get back in the league. The commissioner's office in the past has barred players from this league, and there's no appeal process there, right? Johnny Manziel would be one. He violated the terms of his agreement when he came into the league, gone. There have been other players who have just had allegations against them that were gone. Now, in this case, I think it's actually a good thing that the CFL took their time, had some due process here before they handed down some discipline. That sets a precedent for future players who have to go through this. And then I think to provide some balance as well, that there is still the lawsuit to be played out, but that 87-page report and the executive summary that came along with it from the independent investigator that the league hired seems to show that at least Chad Kelly was in violation, unequivocally, the league said, of the league's gender-based violence policy. So that's where we're at right now with the whole MOP and Chad Kelly situation.
You know, listen, I've been saying this for about a week. I don't think there's anyone that had as much goodwill built up amongst the Canadian Football League than Michael Pinball Clemens. I think a lot of that got used up last week, and it just seemed like they didn't get it, Justin. Like they just didn't grasp, you know, the level of seriousness that this should be taken with. And I'm not sure whether that was just an oversight, a philosophy, a lack of awareness, or just not reading the room properly. But that's certainly the way that it came off. And I think it, you know, it damaged the Argos in that market, which is, I mean, they need all the help they can get. So, I mean, it's one of those situations that I think now people are realizing the seriousness of it if they didn't before. And when you break down the length of the suspension, but also what has to happen for him to be reinstated. And listen, I'm not telling anybody any breaking news that Chad Kelly has a long history of being a knucklehead in a lot of different ways. I do wonder whether he actually ever suits up in the CFL again.
Honestly, Hustler, you know, I think that's fair to speculate on. And to your point about Pinball Clemens coming out, it seemed like he didn't have a full grasp of the details in the lawsuit or potentially what had gone on under his, I don't want to even say watch, because some people will tell you, yes, he's the general manager in title, but he's not necessarily heavily involved in the day-to-day operations. I mean, I would like to ask him that question and have him break it down. But there are other people there that I know specifically behind the scenes are very heavily involved in contract negotiations, signing players, everything that has to go on from a day-to-day perspective in the offseason and in-season in the front office. So I do think that that was a mistake, because Pinball was asked very detailed questions, and I'm only going to speak for myself here, but by multiple reporters who have read the lawsuit, and again, I just want to talk for myself here, who have the details down in terms of what has been put on paper, both in the statement of claim, the amended statement of claim, the statement of defense from Chad Kelly, the statement of defense from the Argonauts. And it didn't seem like Pinball knew those details off by heart, which in a situation like this, you better know when you go in front of the cameras. And I thought there would be a lot more talk from him of, well, there's a lawsuit that's still ongoing. I can't answer that question. Because there were a couple of missteps there that I don't want to point out directly, but where he was talking about statements that were made within this lawsuit that has gone back and forth now in terms of the sides having their say as to their series of events, that it didn't seem like he knew what he was talking about. But to get back to your original point there, I do feel like it is fair to speculate and wonder out loud if Chad Kelly will ever suit up for the Toronto Argonauts or any other CFL team again, because I think what the situation has showed, yes, the Argos, boat got tipped over with all of this, with the way they handled it. They steered it into a big old rock. It shows the league and the rest of the teams, they better straighten up and fly right with this stuff, and that we're living in 2024, and that every employee in every workplace deserves fair treatment. Now, to be fair to Chad Kelly's side, there are still allegations that have yet to be tested or proven in court against him in a lawsuit. But by the letter of the CFL's law, he has essentially been deemed guilty, and that's why this punishment has been handed down. And that's why I wanted to drive home the fact that he needs to actually be reinstated before he can even think about playing football again. So that, to me, Hustler, spoke volumes that he was on the field for rookie minicamp, but he has a series of meetings and things he needs to check off before he even gets back to that.
This guy doesn't get it. This guy doesn't get it. And I don't think he was getting proper guidance and leadership from people in that organization. There was obviously some other people that didn't get it as well, because I'm sort of with you. I mean, from a football standpoint, assuming that Kelly's gone for a good portion of this season, and again, I am dubious to believe that week 10 or whatever, when they played 9 games, he's going to be back. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. They've invested a lot in this guy. They had a great season last year before an atrocious playoff performance by Chad Kelly, but where does this leave the Argos from a football standpoint at the quarterback position and going into this year?
Cam Dukes, as Ryan Dinwiddie told me, has the head start to be QB1 to start the season now, because the Argos are moving forward as if they're not going to have Chad Kelly for at least 9 games. And it makes you wonder that if Dukes gets off to a solid start and the Argos are playing good football, and you remember that undefeated run they had to start the season last year, that there's no reason why that couldn't happen again, or why they couldn't be leading the East, that perhaps the Argos say, yeah, we've given Chad Kelly about $300,000 in hard money or guaranteed money in CFL terms. But, maybe we just roll with Cam Dukes, who by all accounts is one of those salt of the earth guys and doesn't have the history, as you said, of Kelly being a knucklehead. So maybe they just forget it after that, after 9 games, or if Chad Kelly even comes back. I think that hasn't been talked about. You saw it, Hustler, there in Winnipeg. Cam Dukes started that game and had the Argonauts in front. And then I think they kind of, took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit with some of the substitutions they made and resting guys, but he looked pretty good. He won a game on the road in Ottawa to end the season for Toronto as well. So he's got command of the Argos offense, and he's starting to build some trust and become a leader with what he did last season. I think it should be said that I do believe behind the scenes, from what I've heard, that there was advice given to Chad Kelly that he just didn't take. With what he was doing on Instagram Live, it appeared as if he was intoxicated. With some of the continued Twitter posts that he's had that are just so way off base that I don't even want to go into detail about them, that he's just ignored that. And I think behind the scenes, there are some people within the Argonauts that would rather just be rid of all of the headaches that Chad Kelly's created for them and deal with a guy like Cam Dukes or Brian Scott, who are just laser focused on playing quality football and being decent human beings.
Justin Dunk's with us from 3 Down Nation. Another big story as camps get going is from Montreal. Explain this to me. Sean Lemon suspended for gambling on the CFL. We thought that was it for him. He is appealing it and is now back with the Alouettes. I mean, take us through this.
And this factors into Chad Kelly's decision to appeal as well, but I think that's a whole other different story. So I'll just talk about Lemon right now. When you appeal as a player, until there is a decision rendered by the independent arbitrator, then you can go and practice with your team. You can go to meetings, film review, go to team events, and play as well. as long as the team allows it. And in this situation, the Alouettes are comfortable with Shawn Lemon being at practice at training camp. And, it seems like going forward, they would be comfortable with him playing. So he has appealed this indefinite suspension from the CFL. And you've seen this, Hustler, over the years. It can take quite a while for these things to play out in various ways. So if I'm Shawn Lemon, I'm thinking, hey, I can appeal. I can get, at least a handful of game checks and see what happens with the possible discipline.
Yeah, it is. And just to be clear, he is accused of betting on CFL games, but he did bet his team to win. Like there's no accusations of him like throwing a game. That being said, it's very clear you are not allowed to bet on the Canadian Football League if you're a Canadian Football League player. I mean, there's no wiggle room there for that.
There's not. It was made even more clear, and I think part of Lemon's appeal is going to be the fact that there wasn't any courses on this, like there is domestic violence or the gender-based violence policy. And to be abundantly clear, it was one bet for 70 euros, which is approximately $100 Canadian, on a 2-game parlay. And yes, one of those games involved his team at the time, the Calgary Stampeders, and he was betting on Stampeders to win. So there were no other instances where they caught him betting on other CFL games. And if you go look at the article that's up that I posted today on 3downnation.com, it details when the CFL sent out more information to players about this, and the fact that he placed this bet in 2021. There wasn't really much talk about this at the time. I mean, you could argue on the other side that if you're a professional athlete, you should never bet on your games. But the information that had been relayed from the league was lacking at that time. And I would argue probably still is even lacking at this point, but it's become enhanced in 2022 and 2023. So if you're Shawn Lemon, you're looking at this and going, talking to a lawyer, I probably have a pretty good case here to get this discipline reduced.
Hey, just quickly on our way out, some Bomber news today. The Bombers signed their second rounder, Canadian running back Michael Chris Ike, who's actually from out your way in the Hammer. You got a Canadian running back in Brady Oliveira. You want to continue that Canadian content, but you know much about Chris Ike?
I know a little bit. That dude's a beast. He's really athletic, and he is a guy that is going to pack a punch when he runs the football. Now, there's a long way to go. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Brady Oliveira yet. He's got to earn that. But he has some very intriguing traits, which is why the Bombers selected him as high as they did in the CFL draft.
Dunk, keep up the great work at 3 Down. And even though you'll be with the Riders and the Rider broadcast, you're always a friend of ours. And I'm actually looking forward to some more great CFL content. And the Bomber fans, I'm sure, will be popping in and they'll have their takes in the chat and whatnot. It should make for that much more of a fun series between these clubs when everything gets going. Let's do this again real soon. Appreciate your time as always.
You bet, man. Just real quick as I go, I want to keep it unbiased when I'm doing this stuff for 620 CKRM. And I've already found out, Hustler, the keg that gets filled up with Bombers Blue, the owner of it, his name is escaping me, but he treated me very well when I was in Regina there. Do you know which one I'm talking about in Regina?
You know what? I don't.
Oh, it's going to bother me. I'll get the name right next time. But anyways, it fills up with Bomber Blue. He feeds the offensive line. He was telling me, seemed like a heck of a guy there. Yeah.
Okay, I've heard of that, but yeah, no, I'm not sure what the individual are. But hey, listen, the Bomber fans are a gracious bunch, even in Regina. And it's going to make, Labor Day is going to be amazing. The Banjo Bowl will be great. Maybe you take the show on the road for Banjo Bowl and we get the dunk here in the Peg for what is always one of the most fun weekends of the CFL season.
I'll be pushing for it. We'll see.
Thanks for doing this. Let's talk soon.
You bet, man. Thanks, Hustler.
All right, there's Justin Dunk. Check out all of his work at 3downnation.ca. All right, Mike McIntyre's coming up. We were just talking Bombers, CFL. Cannot wait to have a little brown jug coming up at Princess Auto Stadium very soon.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Of course, Little Brown Jug available at Princess Auto Stadium and, of course, at the ballpark. And it won't be long before we're at both of those venues enjoying our teams and the Manitoba summer. You know what? The guys that are busy, though, right now is the team over at Wallace & Wallace. You know, Wallace & Wallace is the fencing and overhead door specialist in town, serving Winnipeg and Manitoba since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter has done a number on your old one, give them a call. They got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood, the right fences, and of course, any temporary fencing in town. Probably done by Wallace & Wallace. They certainly did all the work for the big street parties down during the playoffs as well. Give them a call at 204-452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lowson Crescent off of Kenaston. Guys, if you need to up your menswear game heading into spring and summer, you got to get down to F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you're getting married or in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas about a 15% discount when the guys get their suits at F Apparel. And they've also got a great promo on right now for high school grads needing a suit for the big day at the end of June to take them into the next chapter of their life. F Apparel's there for you, gang, at 190 Smith Street downtown. You can make an appointment or find out more online at that's EPHapparel.com. And shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Pat, Pitt, and the gang up right now. The entire Aikens team getting ready for the beginning of fishing season. And as always, it is filling up right now for people that want the incredible hospitality of Aikens Lake and the world-class fishing waiting for you. And one of the very few, or maybe the only, fly-in fishing option where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. Can't say enough about my experiences at Aikens in the past. Find out more online at aikenslake.com about availability for the summer season. And again, check them out at all of the socials at Aikens Lake. All right, Lyss Houde coming up a little later on. We'll talk some Jets and PWHL. Right now, Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press joins us on a Tuesday afternoon. Mike, what's going on?
Huss, good to be here. Still buzzing after that great gathering last night, the Kenny and Rennie year-end party. Lots of great fans, lots of...
You were there? How did I not see you?
It was a big crowd. I was there. I saw you from a distance, but you were holding court with, of course, everybody. You were a busy man. Everybody wants to talk to Huss at these events. So I was sort of in a completely different corner than you. And there were a lot of people there, of course. And my goodness, by the time I left last night, I almost had no voice. Like, because, you had to talk loud because there were so many people there. But safe to say, there was a lot of buzz about the Jets and what happened and what's to come. It was like a live version of Winnipeg Sport Talk or the Kenny and Rennie show. And it's great to see that community come out. A lot of familiar faces. You put some faces to names of people that you hear from during the season in the chats and emails and on Twitter, that sort of thing. And there was a good buzz going on. I really enjoyed my time there. I'm sure you did as well.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Although I did not see you. I apologize for not saying hi or hooking up.
All good. All good. You were a busy man. I did, by the way, I love a couple of people came up to me. One guy said, "Hey, you're Piper's dad." And I can't say I've ever been introduced or greeted by that. And a couple of people asked me why Piper wasn't there. I can only imagine letting a 70-pound boxer run wild inside TCB with that would have been
pizza.
Yeah, that would have been quite the scene. We might get a cameo today. She's snoozing on. She doesn't like rainy days. Oh, here she comes. She heard her name. doesn't like rainy days because it prevents her from kind of doing her thing in the backyard. So we might get a cameo here. She's inching closer to me.
Well, Piper's always welcome to make an appearance on WST. You know what? Just before we get into the coaching search, what do you make of a lot of the narrative around, the Jets, what they need moving forward? Like, listen, I get it. We live in a world where recency bias takes over. I mean, you can have a terrible season, and if all of a sudden you play well in the playoffs, that's what people will remember. It kind of seems like the quick exit and the way the series went to the Colorado Avalanche, to a lot of people, has completely erased any of the positives, of which there were many, in a season where this team won 52 games, was 4th overall in the National Hockey League. Like, the more I'm hearing a lot of people that are almost in blow it up mode, and listen, I get it. I mean, the playoffs were a disaster, and I think there's a lot of soul searching and a lot of evaluation that needs to happen. But I don't know. I'm just like, what are you hearing right now from people? And maybe sometimes just the more negative ones are the louder ones that, people that are sort of that. I think that there's something to that as well. But I have to admit, I was a little surprised in conversation with some people, and certainly what I'm getting out on social media with some of the conversations we've had on the show, of just how far out people are on what has been accomplished under the Rick Bowness era right now. Because, I mean, if we recall where this team was 2 years ago, it was not a good place. And again, 10 playoff games in 2 years is not enough. But I mean, the overall body of work was really good. Rick Bowness is up for the Jack Adams as Coach of the Year this year, Mike.
Well, and he coached at the All-Star game, right? Because the Jets had the best record, not Dallas, not Colorado. It was Winnipeg that had the best record at the cutoff date, and that's why Rick Bowness got the invite. Yeah, I mean, look, the playoffs are the ultimate small sample size, or they can be, if you're one and done. And it's interesting, I guess, because the Jets played the Avalanche. Just in my For You feed on social media, I'm inundated with Avalanche tweets, because that's obviously a lot of engagement was on a Colorado end. And it's funny, Huss, to see how quickly the narrative has changed in Denver. All the angst that we're hearing and seeing from Jets fans after their round one exit, it's like we're seeing a carbon copy of it now from Avalanche fans now that they're down 3-1 and just got humiliated 2 straight games in their own building, outscored 9-2 by Dallas. I'm not kidding when I say I'm seeing people suggesting Jared Bednar should be fired, blow up the core of McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar. Like, it is incredible how things change. And that's why I do think it's important to keep some proper perspective. And an 82-game season will always be a greater representation of a team's overall ability than a 7-game playoff series or even a couple playoff series. So that's why if you're the Jets, despite some of that white noise that's out there, and I would agree with your take that it's probably the very vocal minority who maybe are making it seem like the sky is falling when it really isn't. If you're the Jets, you did accomplish a lot of great things during the regular season, things that you hope you can bring into next season. And look, they obviously fell on their face in the first round against Colorado. The better team clearly won that series. But if you consistently can produce the kind of regular seasons like the Jets just had, you're giving yourself a better chance than that lightning in the bottle scenario, as you mentioned, the team that, barely gets in, but they're hot at the right time. And that can happen, right? It looks like, at the end of the day here, you look at who's leading the various series, Dallas, Vancouver, the Rangers, and Florida. All 4 of those teams, Huss, won their divisions. So, maybe a lot of people thought Edmonton would be the favorite. I certainly did against Vancouver. I also thought Carolina might upset the Rangers, and maybe they still will. I had Colorado beating Dallas because I had just seen Colorado do what they did to Winnipeg. But at the end of the day, we might have 4 first-place teams in the Final Four, which suggests that you're better off to have a really good regular season and hope that that carries over than just have a mediocre regular season and hope that you can find the right formula in the playoffs. So, yeah, the sky is not falling on the Jets. They did a lot of great things. And if they could more or less duplicate that next season, I think they'd like their chances to have another chance in the playoffs, sitting in the position that they were this spring.
Yeah. Now, which kind of brings us to the coaching search and the predicament and both the opportunity that the organization has right now.
Yeah.
To move forward. And I think everyone would agree. I mean, the last 2 regular seasons were great. They were beyond everyone's expectations, but the playoffs were a dud. And this is a results-based business. A good regular season gets you into the playoffs, and that's it. And it's about making it happen and being your best at that time. And I don't think there's any doubt that the Jets weren't at their best against the Avalanche. They deserve a lot of credit, partly for what they did to Winnipeg.
Sure.
But as the team looks for a head coach moving forward, I mean, as we mentioned, there's a lot of good that you want to build off from this year. What kind of a coach gets you to the second round? Like, is there a particular quality out there that this team should be looking for that would guarantee better performances when it really counts in the playoffs? Like, there's a lot of interesting names out there and guys that have done it before, some guys that have a lot of promise and potential. I have a very hard time, as much as I've thought about this and talked about it with everyone, identifying one thing or another that makes a great playoff coach, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a coach that's been there, done that, I think would earn some points because, a coach that's won 4 rounds on the biggest stage, is that a guarantee that they could do it again with another team? Of course not. It never is, but it doesn't hurt to have that quality. We hear that at times in terms of player acquisitions, right? A guy that's been to the Cup final or that's won a Cup and the value of that experience. I suspect with a coaching staff or a head coach, a leader, having a coach that's been through that battle and came out on the winning end of it is not a bad thing at all. And that's where a name like Craig Berube certainly is very interesting. Now, Berube, the team that won that year, they are kind of they're the epitome of lightning in a bottle, right? The Blues were pretty much the worst team in the league when Craig Berube took over, and he got them pointed in the right direction. Yes, they had Jordan Binnington playing out of his mind, going on a memorable and historic kind of run in net. And they carried that momentum from a late season charge straight through to a Stanley Cup. If Craig Berube, and who, all reports are, is that he's interviewing with the Jets today, and we expected that the Jets would certainly have a conversation with Berube at the very least, but he's a winner. And, that's got to work in his favor. I think it's why there's a lot of teams that are being linked to Craig Berube, whether it's Toronto, whether it's New Jersey, because he is a proven winner. Now, he didn't win nearly.
Here, just quickly on that, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I'll reset it if people joined late for you. No one's ever going to take that Stanley Cup ring out of his drawer. He had that miracle, incredible run in 2019.
Yeah.
Other than that, in his coaching career, he's won 1 round in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I mean, and just got fired by the Blues. And I realize everything is cyclical. Like, I have a hard time just pinning this guy did this 1 year with this team, and thus this team will be better in the playoffs because of that guy. Like, I don't think it works that way. However, if we look, Mike, at the guys that are coaching right now, you've got Maurice, you've got Laviolette, Rod the Bod. Maybe the best example of it all is Rick Tocchet in Vancouver and the job that he's done. And let's face it, the Canucks were an underwhelming, I think now we can agree, underachieving team before he got there. And he has molded them into a version of himself.
Sure.
And listen, the one thing that stood out to me when the Jets did their exit interviews, and they said, well, what was the difference between the Jets and the Avalanche in the series? The one thing that a number of them said was that we weren't able to get to their level of intensity. And again, like, I don't know how you quantify that, but it's pretty clear. And right now, we're watching a series between the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks, which I think you can make there's a lot of similarities in that the Canucks are playing every single shift like it's their last. And they are incredibly motivated. They are incredibly physical. They're playing that level of playoff hockey that I don't think the Jets did. And I give Tocchet a ton of credit for that. When I do think of Berube, he does strike me as a pretty intense guy, a hard-ass guy, a guy that's played, so understands what the players are going through, but still demands a level of buy-in, accountability that, well, certainly worked in 2019, and I think you could also argue has done a pretty good job with a Blues team that maybe didn't have the talent over the last couple of years to really compete.
Agreed.
But that sort of a guy, maybe I think that might be the attraction for teams like Toronto and Winnipeg that have had very, very good teams, talented rosters, talented players that just haven't got to where Vancouver's at right now, where Dallas is at, where Florida is at. And obviously we're seeing that because the brand of hockey that's being played right now, especially by the teams that are winning, is a far, far cry from what we saw from the Winnipeg Jets for those 5 games.
It sure is. And, but put me in the camp, I guess, Huss, of I'm one of those who feels that coaches at times, they get too much blame for when things go wrong. And I mean, what are we up to, like 18, 19 coaching changes? Like that's insane. And to me, that's no way, and I'm not commenting on any specific move, just in general, to have that much change like in a year, that is panic. That is no way to build a proven winner. You need some semblance of consistency. So to me, there's Exhibit A. There's the smoking gun that coaches get too much blame. But I also feel at times coaches maybe get too much credit. Ultimately, it's the players that perform or don't perform. And, again, let's look at Colorado and Jared Bednar wins a cup in 2022. So what's after some frustrating years in Colorado? So now the narrative is that Jared Bednar and the Avalanche are proven winners. What happens last year? They get ushered out of the first round by a second-year team in Seattle. What happens this year? They absolutely school the NHL's best defensive team in the regular season, score 5+ goals every game and look like they're on another level. And again, now people are saying, there's the Avalanche, there's Jared Bednar. Jets got out-coached. Well, now look, now the Avalanche are down 3-1, and all of a sudden there's some saying Jared Bednar can't make adjustments. The Avalanche don't have what it takes. So again, I find almost the knee-jerk reaction, and it goes back to that old saying, can't fire all 18 players. So the coach wears it often. So does the goaltender. Look at here in Winnipeg. Look at a lot of the narrative around Connor Hellebuck. Tremendous regular season. He's going to win his second Vezina trophy. But some have attached a label that he flops on a big stage, that he can't make the saves when they really count. So I think coaches get too much credit and too much blame. That being said, I think you want a leader who can, and that's where a guy like Rick Tocchet seems to just be, excelling in that the players have taken on his identity. They're playing the way Rick Tocchet played the game. And he's a cool under pressure, doesn't show much emotion during the games. And I think his players, they've been able to adapt that and weather those ups and downs. So that's going back to when you asked about the qualities that a team like the Jets look for. Craig Berube, there would have been a lot of adversity in 2019 when they won that cup. And he obviously that year was able to weather it perfectly and get his group prepared for big, meaningful games on a big stage, and they ultimately won the final prize. Now, was that a flash in the pan? Is that the true Craig Berube? Did he forget all of what he did that year, and now he doesn't have that anymore? Again, it comes down to, I think, personalities. Coaching in the NHL is as much about managing egos and personalities. At the end of the day, whether it's Scott Arniel, Craig Berube, someone else, they can't go out there and make a save, kill a penalty, score a timely goal. they obviously can put players in positions to hopefully succeed and make adjustments to what the other team is doing. I just think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, and that's why interviews are so important, right? That's where coaches win GMs and franchises over, because they say the right things. They charm the socks off of individuals, the people making the decisions, and people ultimately say this is what our room needs. So yeah, we don't know exactly what the Jets are looking for. I still believe Scott Arniel is the favorite, because I think, going back to your original question, if you're the Jets, what are you looking for? I think you're looking for a coach that can maintain a lot of what they have built here over the last 2 years, the defensive structure, the discipline. Obviously, some tweaks are needed, especially when the games get more important, because the Jets haven't adjusted the way they've needed to. But I don't think you want to just blow it up or abandon all that worked so well for you over these last 2 regular seasons.
No, I'm with you. And to that point, I think that there's as much, if not more, work to be done by Kevin Cheveldayoff than the new head coach of this team. I mean, we saw Mike Blue Line that was overwhelmed and exposed in the playoffs. And, those decisions for the Blue Line, I mean, DeMello and Dillon, potential room for younger players and Ville Heinola, and I'll ask Sal Monson, and an additional player that can come in, preferably on the right side, to be an impact player that can eat up big minutes, because I think we all saw that, Neil Pionk really, really struggled at times over both of the last couple seasons, though I did like his first half this year. And he actually had a really strong playoff last year. He was one of the few guys, and he had to step up big time when Morrissey was out. But it was a disaster for the better part of this season. He's got one more year left. So how Kevin Cheveldayoff navigates all of that, I think will be more impactful, to be honest, than what a new head coach comes in and does. And once you have the roster and you think you've got your skids and a chair in the dance, then you see what happens in the playoffs next year. But this is, listen, speaking of that defenseman, there has been plenty of bluster out there that the trade piece to get that player might be Nikolai Ehlers. Just thoughts on Ehlers' position going into the final year of his contract with the Winnipeg Jets, the likelihood of re-signing or the likelihood that he could be traded.
Yeah, I agree in that a guy like Nikolai Ehlers is perhaps your best trade chip. It's interesting, in chatting last night at the gathering, I had a few people mention another winger that they felt might have even more trade value than Nikolai Ehlers in terms of changing, bringing in an impact defenseman. And that's one Kyle Connor, who's got 2 years left on his deal. He makes a little more, obviously, than Ehlers. He's $7.1 million. Nikolai Ehlers, $6 million. I think Ehlers' name is going to be out there, for some time here, Huss, one way or another, because he's just got that one more year, right? And so if you're the Jets, it's not unlike, he's obviously not at the level of Scheifele and Hellebuck, where last summer, that's what we were talking about, one more year. If they're not signing extensions, you got to move them. You don't want to go into next season. What if he gets hurt? Now and then you can't trade him at the deadline. Or what if you're in a playoff spot? Now are you using him as your own rental? But that's not great asset, man. So all the arguments that were being made about Hellebuck and Scheifele a year ago, I'd say to a slightly lesser degree, you could now make about Nikolai Ehlers. And we don't know if Nikolai Ehlers wants to commit long-term and sign an extension. He certainly gave a lukewarm answer when Ken Wiebe asked him about that. I think his answer was, I can't give you an answer, which wasn't exactly, I'd love to stay here. I love this place. And vice versa, Huss. I mean, we don't know what Jets management thinks. Maybe they don't want to sign Nikolai Ehlers to a long-term because, as you've mentioned, maybe they see him as someone that could land them a top pairing or a top 4 right shot D-man. that is an area I think that everyone would agree. I mean, you don't want to put too much pressure on Elias Salomonson to just step right in. He might ultimately be that guy. Maybe he's Josh Morrissey's future partner on a top pairing. But right now, that would be a lot to put on a guy that, for a team that hopes to go right back into the Stanley Cup conversation next year. So, yeah, I mean, I think Ehlers naturally, because of his contract status, because of what he said or didn't say, there's going to be a lot of talk. And, there's a lot of people that like to pick apart Nikolai Ehlers' game for things he doesn't do well. But there's also a lot of things he does very well that I'd have to think a trade market for Nikolai Ehlers would be extremely robust. And that would be one way for sure for the Jets to address an area of need.
Well, I agree with all of that. And listen, I'm a huge Ehlers fan.
Me
We
too.
talked about him for years on this program. I mean, you look back at what he did this season, was durable, was rarely on that top line. He did have that run while Kyle Connor was gone, scored 25 goals, 0 on the power play.
That's incredible.
At the same time, he did nothing in the playoffs. And, within, with what we're talking about right now, a team, like, it's great to be good in the regular season. It's fun. You got to make the playoffs. You got to be there. But there has been, unfortunately, Nick doesn't have a great history of raising his level of game and being even better and more impactful in the playoffs. Frankly, the opposite. And I do wonder how much that resonates within the management office of the Winnipeg Jets as to, the decision-making as to whether they make a big push to re-sign him and potentially consider moving another player or moving Ehlers and getting on with that with potentially a blue liner coming in, which would, of course, maybe open up a spot for one of the younger guys knocking on the door for a position on the team, considering how many of the guys on the Jets last year are already signed for next season, which is pretty much all of the forwards.
Yeah, and, on Nikolai Ehlers, like, here's a guy, he's got 201 career goals in 605 games. So basically he's, scoring every third game. He's played 37 playoff games. So, based on that, you'd expect him to have in the area of about a dozen goals based on his regular season performance. He has 4, just 4 goals. None this year in 5 games. He had 2 assists. And, you look back, Huss, like even in 2018, when the Jets went all the way to the West Final, Ehlers was banged up, I believe, for at least a few of those games because he only played 15 that year. He didn't have any goals. He had 7 assists, but no goals in 15 games in 2018. Certainly the Jets could have used a few goals, especially in the West Final against Vegas that year. But yeah, I mean, again, we talk about labels that coaches wear. Players get labeled too, right? And the label on Nikolai Ehlers is that he's inconsistent. There was a previous label that he was injury prone, and that's why I think this past year was a great step for him to play all 82, even though, as he told us at the end of the year, Huss, he's still dealing with neck issues stemming from that preseason injury that caused him to miss the whole preseason. He said he's going to get that addressed this summer. Did that have an impact on his inconsistency and maybe his playoff performance? We don't know. But, he said he was playing hurt. So, we'll see what obviously the future brings for him. But, yeah, I mean, I think ideally you'd love Nikolai Ehlers to be a part of what this group is trying to do and be a big contributor to getting this team where it wants to go. But in the often cold, cruel world of professional sports, there's a business side to it. And certainly his contract status, 1 more year, certainly a very reasonable $6 million this year. But if you're not getting his name on an extension, either because you don't want to extend him or he doesn't want to extend or it's mutual, whatever the case is, if he's not extending, this is the time to move him. Even if it was to a team that isn't necessarily re-signing him, you'd still be moving a proven 25 goal scorer, 60-point producer on a $6 million cap hit for next season. You'd have to think the return would be a heck of a lot better than letting him walk for nothing in a year from now.
Yeah, and listen, I'm sort of with you on that. I mean, I do think the Jets need to get clarity on this. First of all, their own position on it. Ehlers' position on everything, and move forward. Obviously, he can't sign an extension until June.
July 1.
Exactly, the 1st of July. The draft is just a couple days before that. So whether there is some sort of a trade with allowing the Ehlers group to speak with the new club and work on, because I think a team, and listen, if you are trading a player like that, the value of Ehlers, I think, in trade goes up significantly if you can tie that into a new contract, and the team getting Nikolai Ehlers has some certainty that they're going to have him for more than 1 year.
By the way, can I throw one other little interesting nugget out there? If we're talking trades before the draft and before free agency, if you're the Jets, Laurent Brossoit is going to be in big demand this summer because of what he did this year. I wouldn't completely rule out a scenario that sees the Jets trade his rights prior to July 1. If they have an inkling that there's a team that really wants him and the Jets, they know they're not re-signing him. And, if Brossoit is willing to play ball as well, if it's a team that Brossoit is willing to sign with, we've seen that. You don't see it happen a ton, but we have seen that happen, right? Where a team has a pending UFA. And you look at the Jets, like they've traded some draft capital over the last. I'm not saying you get a massive return for it. I am saying, though, you could get some return potentially. And we know that Laurent Brossoit loves the Jets organization. They love him. He's not leaving because there's a breakdown between player and team. It's the team wants him to get more opportunity. They know it's not coming here. It'll be interesting to see if Laurent Brossoit is a guy that gets moved prior to July 1st. And the Jets maybe get a draft pick out of it, a mid-round kind of pick.
Yeah, no, listen, that's a great point, Mike. And the Jets don't have their first rounder. They don't have their third rounder. They don't have their second rounder either, but they do have the Habs second rounder, which is early in the second round. And then they've got 4, 5, 6, and 7. And, an additional pick for a guy that is gone, that would just be doing good business. And I think they might be able to do right by LB as well.
Yes.
If they know some teams that he's interested in going to and, can potentially make that happen, before the draft, get him a new contract, and everyone walks away happy. Who will walk away happier this offseason, Brendan Dillon or Dylan DeMello? And will one or both or neither of them be walking away happy with a new contract from the Jets?
So this was a popular talking point last night at the Kenny and Rennie gathering. Let me say, Huss, this is where I sit today on this. If I was handicapping the odds, I would say there's a very good chance the Jets sign one of those two, but not both. And if I'm trying to handicap which is the most likely, I keep coming back to Brendan Dillon as the more likely of the two. Now, I know Dylan DeMello is the right shot guy. I just think if you're the Jets, Brendan Dillon made it pretty clear on exit day, he's not necessarily looking for the biggest money offer. He's looking for a fit. And he made it very clear he loves the fit in Winnipeg. And we know they love him and for what he brings in terms of on-ice ability and leadership and all those intangibles, obviously toughness, physicality. I'm not saying Dylan DeMello doesn't also love being in Winnipeg. I think he really does. And I think the Jets love what Dylan DeMello's done. I just wonder if the contract that DeMello ultimately signs, to me, it's probably the bigger deal, maybe in terms of both years and AAV. And I wonder for that reason if he's not the more likely of the two that finds another home this summer, and the Jets, don't find a way to at least get to a number with Brendan Dillon that everybody can live with. So, to me, signing both, I'll say this, unless they find a way to move like a Nate Schmidt, and I don't believe that's going to be very tough. I also don't know if a buyout of Nate Schmidt would really be in the cards. But I think as long as you're still carrying Nate Schmidt's contract into next season, to me, the more likely is you're probably only able to re-sign one of those two blue liners. And while they both bring all kinds of great things to the team that just won in the Jennings Trophy this past year, I think Dillon is the more likely of the two that gets re-signed.
Yeah, listen, I've been a Pionk defender at times at the start of the season, but I mean, it's pretty hard to make that case. At the end of the playoffs, I was having conversations saying that, if they were going to buy one of those two guys out, I might suggest that Pionk would be the wiser one. I mean, Schmidt, great locker room guy, can play both sides. If you're going to have him as your 6th or 7th defenseman, I think you can live with that.
Yeah.
The thing with Pionk is that he's been playing high enough up in the lineup that when he does struggle, it really, really impacts the hockey club. And we saw that as well. And just as far as DeMello goes, and again, this is one of those things where, does the regular season matter? Well, of course it does matter. He had an incredible regular season. He was plus 45. He was a great partner of Josh Morrissey. I thought he was overwhelmed and really struggled in the playoffs. Now, he had a lot of company, but I do wonder about, what they remember from this playoff series, how much that affects the decision-making. Because, listen, we know you need to have some big, bad dudes on your blue line. Brendan Dillon is that dude on the Winnipeg Jets. And, I think that they would definitely want to keep him in the mix. And, I do wonder if they look at their other options, as good as DeMello's been for this club and as beloved as he was as a teammate, and think that maybe that's the route they have to go.
Yeah. Well, and Pionk's an interesting one because we talked about Nikolai Ehlers earlier and him only having, next season, and then he's a UFA. Neil Pionk's in that exact same boat. He's got one more year. The money's actually almost the same as Ehlers. He's making $5.875. Nikolai Ehlers is making $6.
Jets could have a $12 million third pairing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, exactly, with Schmidt. And so, you wonder if you're the Jets. And again, what's the plan beyond next season with Neil Pionk? Are you looking to re-sign him? What would that cost? Is he looking to re-sign here? I don't think Neil Pionk, given his play and his cap hit, I don't think he has nearly the same value on the trade market as a Nikolai Ehlers. But yeah, I mean, so to go back to your point and your question about Dillon and DeMello, and I said if Nate Schmidt's on the roster, I still have a hard time seeing how they re-sign both. I could add Neil Pionk into that as well, and that'll be another thing to watch this summer. Could the Jets potentially move Neil Pionk? What would it take? Would they have to retain some salary? Would they be willing to retain in order to make that more appealing to a team that takes him? Because again, not only is there the DeMello and Dillon situation, there's the Ville Heinola, situation where he's not waiver exempt. You've got to find a spot for him next year. He's got to be in the mix, absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot on Kevin Cheveldayoff's plate for sure. Once he gets through the, the main course right now of selecting the next head coach, no doubt he's going to have no shortage of player decisions that have to be made as well.
Mike, great chat as always. What do you have cooking in the Freep coming up over the rest of this week?
Yeah, I'm kind of all over the map this week. I had a great chat with Aaron Cockrell earlier today. He's in Dubai, so I've got a story coming on Aaron this week. I'm doing a little Winnipeg Goldeyes story, some a Winkler Flyers tale tonight. I'm going to be at the Assiniboine Downs media kickoff luncheon later this week. So a little bit of everything. Huss, variety is the spice of life, and we'll of course, along with Ken Wiebe, we'll be on Jets Coach Watch here as well in the coming days. We'll see what happens. I'm sure some dominoes will start to fall around the league with the various openings. So yeah, should be an interesting few days. Looking forward to it. The rain outside suggests won't be able to work on my golf game this week, so I'll be pounding away at the keyboard.
Well, listen, we can get the rain out of the way for these next few days because next week is going to be amazing. Opening day of the Downs on Monday, Goldeyes home opener on Tuesday, Sea Bears kicking it off on Friday. Lots for us to chew on in addition to the Jets off season. Mike, as always, thanks for doing this.
Bombers preseason opener next week as well. Yeah, busy.
Yeah, in Saskatchewan. That's right. We got to wait a little bit longer to get to Princess Auto Stadium, but we'll be there. Anyways, you take it easy. Thanks for the time as always.
You betcha. Have a great week.
We're going to continue. We'll talk a little Jets and some PWHL with Lyss Houde coming up in just a minute. As we mentioned, got to wait a little longer to get out to Princess Auto Stadium for the Blue Bomber season. But When it's on, it's on. And at the end, we will have a game in May, end of May for the preseason. And then it is go time for the Blue Bombers. We'll check in training camp over the next couple days here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors the Bombers. The home of the Bombers, Princess Auto Stadium, also hosting the Canada Day Extravaganza. A huge day of programming all day for the entire family, completely free, headlined by fireworks and a concert with Sam Roberts and Doc Walker. Should be a great night. You can find out more information on that event at the Blue Bomber website, but make a point to get out to Princess Auto Stadium on July 1st to celebrate Canada Day. And in the meantime, pop by your local Princess Auto. Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. Princess Auto, proudly headquartered and founded right here in Winnipeg. You can also shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Speaking of being at the stadium, cannot wait to be cheersing a few of you WSTers with a Canadian Club or a CC and Ginger at the park this year. Of course, Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, fueling many fans in the north end of the zone at the Rum Hut and the Jim Beam Social House. Of course, the entire Beam Centauri family of spirits available at Princess Auto Stadium. And in the meantime, if you can't wait to get one of those at a Bomber game, head down to your local Manitoba liquor marts and get the best in Canadian whiskey, the original Canadian Club, available at any of your local Manitoba liquor marts. Royal Sports, tent sale, not this weekend, but the following weekend. You Winnipeggers love good deals, and there's simply nothing like a Royal Sports tent sale. Thousands of pieces of merchandise priced at 50% off or less, thousands of pairs of shoes, licensed team gear, and more. So circle that on your calendar, the 25th and 26th for the next Royal tent sale. In the meantime, pop by there now for great deals on arriving spring stock for soccer, baseball, softball, tennis, running, and a huge selection of bikes. And as you know, the best selection of team licensed merchandise around. And listen to this. We're going to bring Lyss Houde on, who we've got a fun event coming up for all of you that have gotten into the PWHL for the playoffs. And it's going to be happening down at Next Door, which is adjacent right beside Good Neighbor Brewing on Sherbrooke at 116. Little watch party for game one of the PWHL finals. We'll find out when that is and have more information on the show in the coming days. But I went to Next Door last Wednesday and tried out their Wingy Wednesday. My God, the wings were amazing. And listen, this is a really neat spot. It's next door to Good Neighbor, as I mentioned. They've teamed up with the guys behind Cosmos and Hoagie Boys for the food in the spot. And tomorrow, Wednesday, a pound of naked wings for $15. But the kicker is they have a sauce cart where you get to choose your own sauces, mix and match, pour as much as you want from 14 house-made sauces. The new sauce this week is Maui Wowie, a saucy, savory soy ginger scallion mix. Take it from me. I love wings. Had them last week. They were awesome. Great spot in the heart of Wolseley if you haven't been there. Next door at 116 Sherbrooke. And that's where we're going to be hanging out with our next guest to watch a little PWHL. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk some Jets right now and welcome Lyss Houde to Winnipeg Sports Talk. This has been a long time coming. It was great to see you last night at the Kenny and Rennie event. The whole crew was out there, and it's great to have you on the show. What's going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was real fun. I think I probably got some good material to talk about today. Talking with everyone over at TransCanada last night. Always good to see everybody. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, listen, the takes were flowing. I mean, you get that sort of a group there. I mean, it's like, as Mike mentioned, it really is in a lot of ways sort of a live version of the WST chat, which can obviously go off the rails at times, but for the most part, a really fun, respectful group. And when it comes to the Jets, it's such an interesting time because people have many different perspectives on, where the organization is at right now, the decision to make for a head coach and where they go forward. Because, listen, the playoffs was a real disappointment. I think a lot of people really felt, and listen, you win 52 games, you finish fourth in the league, you feel like you've got a real chance to win. Now, I think we all knew if you were playing Colorado or Dallas, nothing was going to be easy in the Central Division. But it was the speed of the exit and just how lopsided the play was in a few of those games. Where are you at in comparing a really great regular season that I think exceeded everyone's expectations with the disappointment of the 5 games and out at the hands of the Avs?
Yeah, it's hard, and I don't think this is going to be popular among what I've seen from the chat here. And the stats girl, the data science girl in me can't ever throw away an 82-game sample for a 5. I don't work that way. And I think, so there are a lot of really positives from the season that I don't want to forget about. But there were a lot of things, like even I remember in October, it was at training camp before we heard about the Scheifele and Hellebuyck extensions. I was talking to Sean Reynolds and I was team blow it up. I was like, I love DeVincentis and Milic and, all these things, like we haven't extended these guys yet, trade them off, all these sorts of things. Like I wasn't super bought in on this core. And so I still have my little doubts and all those things. Don't get me wrong. In December, I fully was one of those people who was like, I'm already planning the parade, but I've just kind of been back and forth on a lot of different pieces. And I think kind of the conclusion is, I think we should have known deep in our hearts that this team wasn't quite good enough, but I also don't think we need to worry too much about blowing everything out of the water right now as it stands.
Well, you know what? Speaking of that, and you do such a great job, and folks should give Lyss a follow on TikTok particularly, for some numbers-based analysis of what the team has done. And again, you talk about it, 5 games is a small sample size, but it was an ugly sample. There's no other way around it. And, I heard that, or read the Corey Masiak article in the Denver Post on just the way the Avalanche prepare for their opponents, the way they utilize analytics to, identify weaknesses potentially, or strengths at least in matchups. And, reading that after the fact, I don't want to say that was why the series went the way that it was, but it was pretty clear that they had a good read on Winnipeg, despite the fact that they hadn't beat them all season long and got embarrassed by them 7-0 in that final game of the regular season, which maybe admittedly gave us more confidence that we should have had going in. But when you look back at how that series went, what are there any analytic takeaways of what the Jets did poorly in the playoffs as opposed to things that were a strength? Because this team was great keeping the puck out of their own net, and that did not take place in those 5 games against the Avalanche.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this one, it was hard because a lot of things weren't going well. Pretty much every specific individual metric that you could look at from the Jets that they held for most of the season, from goaltending metrics to team defense, and even some offense as well, which was still a point of contention for the Jets all season. Everything had regressed below what the Jets were playing during the regular season. There was nothing that was really at the same level. But in particular, I think the way that Colorado managed Winnipeg's exit, but then also managed their own entry, those were 2 things. And you could look at the numbers of the percentage of controlled exits and those sorts of things, and they were quite heavily skewed in Colorado's favor. But I just think the management of the transition game was something that Vegas absolutely drowned the Jets in last year, and it happened again this year with an interesting Colorado team that was able to cycle the puck a lot better on offense, I think, than the Winnipeg Jets were used to. It's not something that was away from the ordinary that we'd seen from Colorado for a good chunk of the season, but just the dynamism that we see from McCarr at the top and the way that he would kind of move around, especially when he was on the ice with McKinnon and Rantanen, which was most of the time, that led to a lot more of those high danger chances and less, perimeter play and whatnot, a lot more north-south passing right in the offensive zone that kind of made Winnipeg crunch a little bit more in towards Connor Hellebuyck and give up a lot more of those high danger chances that they didn't want to give up.
No, you know what? It's a great observation. And I'll tell you what, it's something that I've noticed as this series has gone on in Dallas and Colorado, that Dallas is doing a far better job of having players up and pressure on the point. Like the amount of times I can remember, and not just McCarr, like McCarr is a special beast that's sort of in his own category. But we saw it with the other Avalanche defensemen as well. Getting the puck, the Jets had caved in so much near Hellebuyck that they had plenty of room to figure out a good shooting lane, a passing lane, and create mayhem in front of Hellebuyck. And it was a very different story when the Jets were in the other end, without a lot of time or space for their defense to do anything. And the pressure on the defense, I think, really was one of those things that exposed something that we knew wasn't a strength of Winnipeg compared to some of their contemporaries in this division in Dallas and Colorado, which was the blue line. And that kind of gets us to what we were talking about with Mike a few minutes ago. with the decisions that the general manager has to do when it comes to rebuilding that blue line. The availability of, a younger player like Sal Monson. I mean, it's tough to just place him into the lineup without seeing him play in North America yet, but there's certainly a lot of potential there. And then real tough decisions cap-wise, as well as age and everything with Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello. Certainly giving us no shortage of off-season topics to get to, Liz. I kind of thought after last year with PLD and Scheifele and Hellebuck that this was going to be a really quiet offseason. And then Bones resigned, and you have the flame out in the playoffs, and we're right back to where we were as far as with a whole bunch of hot topics the Jet fans all have a thought on one way or the other.
Yeah, oh my goodness. It's especially you just look at the cap friendly and you just go look a little bit beyond the next couple seasons and you're like, oh, this is super awesome. We have 3 players that are going to be on this team in 2027. It's a very busy next chunk. And I think you and Mike spoke about it for quite a bit earlier. All eyes on the D-core, right? With how many players that need new contracts and how different things could look, but also how similar things could look. You could sign short-term contracts for guys like Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello, and all of a sudden, maybe you replace something like a Stanley and Schmidt with a Heinola, and your D-core looks pretty similar to how it did this year. Or you could lose all those guys and only have Josh Morrissey and Dylan Sandberg and probably Neil Pionk looking the same as this year. So there's a lot that could happen, I think, in the next little bit with that D-core in particular. But the forward core is also a whole other conversation, a whole other can of worms. So
exactly. I mean, with the exception, listen, Monahan and Toffoli, we'll see what happens with them. I think Toffoli's as good as gone. I wouldn't be surprised if they engaged Monahan to see what a extension might look like. You've got 2 ELCs that are up, Gus and Cole Perfetti. Other than that, everybody's signed. You really would need to be making some sort of moves to open up spots in the roster. But it's a very different story the following year. We mentioned Ehlers in the last year of his deal, Iafallo in the last year of his deal, Mason Appleton in the last year of his deal, Vlad Nemetsnikov in the last, and then players like Kapari and Barron, who will be RFAs at the end of that deal. And then I guess Axel does have another season on his. Of course, he was in between the Moose and the Winnipeg Jets this year. But certainly, as I said, no shortage of storylines. We'll focus on the coach right now. And then as we get closer to the draft in Vegas at the end of June, more on what Kevin Cheveldayoff will do. But listen, I want to transition from the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs to something that I know you have been supporting and paying very close attention to all year long, the PWHL. Let me just ask you, as someone, a female in the hockey space that's always been a big supporter, how exciting has it been for you, not only to have a pro women's league, but to see how well it has been supported this year and the incredible success that they've had on television and especially in the stands?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been awesome. I think there's almost no other way to describe it. And for me, you mentioned my TikTok page earlier and how I talk about, I really, really love inclusivity in sport. I love community in sport. That's what I'm all about. I think it's so fun to, sit around, last night with a couple people that I was talking to at Kenny and Rennie, you do that thing where you stand there for 15 minutes and just name Winnipeg Jets that have played, you love being together, talking about things, whatever. And you say, oh, what we were talking about, Brett Festerling and Kendall McCardle and all these guys, and you're just smiling, beaming, laughing around with everybody, right? That community is something that is so important to me and so important to a lot of sports fans. That's why we love sports. That's why we all continue to suffer through being a sports fan all these years, right? So the more representation that you can get in those types of sports communities is huge for people. And, especially in a place like Canada, that's such a diverse population that has so much opportunity for people. It's so nice to see, different, representation in mainstream sports circuits. So what this league has been able to accomplish this year has been huge, not just for women, but just for anyone who hasn't seen as much visibility of people they identify with in mainstream sports circles. And I think it's been really, really fabulous.
Well, in the league itself, I mean, listen, they've tried other things before. It's not like pro women's hockey wasn't existing. In fact, you had 2 leagues kind of going at each other, and it was going nowhere. And listen, credit to Billie Jean King and the people behind this that made this happen. And sometimes there's tough decisions to get to where they are. There's less teams, there's less jobs right now. But this league seems to have an incredible foundation and base for moving forward. I mean, all 6 teams have had wonderful, successful, I think beyond everybody's expectations when it comes to support. The play's been really good. And again, this was just year one. I mean, they don't even have names yet or logos. That's going to be coming. And I would say, because it's been as successful as it has been, this original six will be joined, whether it's next season, the following year, by plenty more franchises, which is going to be more opportunities for young women to play at the highest level and move forward. And just listen, I want to get to the playoff series in a minute. But so many of these women, as someone that worked with Hockey Canada on the World Women's here, I mean, it was such an incredible experience to get to meet the players from Team Canada. I still maintain the Canada-USA women's hockey rivalry is right there with the greatest rivalries in all of sports. But we didn't get to see it enough. It was once a year at the World Championships. It really got highlighted in the Olympics. But now we're seeing these women on a regular basis on the television. And I just have to get your thoughts on the season that Natalie Spooner's had. I mean, a star for Canada. We've known her before, but I'll be honest. I mean, it was always MPP. Marie-Philippe Poulin is the alpha on Canada. There was a bunch of other good players. Natalie Spooner scored 20 goals in 24 games this year in a league that the scoring, it's not like these games were 8-7 every night, and a huge gap over the second player. I mean, what do you think this year in the PWHL has done for Spooner, both as a player and really as a leader of this next generation that's going to take this league to hopefully great things?
Yeah, I mean, I think Natalie Spooner and every single other player in this league has benefited from the fact that this league is now able to pay them a full-time salary so that these players can focus on giving their all to their sport. We see how intense, professional players are in other leagues where, this is their bread and butter, this is their life and all these things. So having that comfort has been huge, and also all these endorsements that these players can get. Hockey is their full-time life now, which is so exciting and awesome. And players like Natalie Spooner, who have been on the brink of greatness for basically their entire career, like you mentioned, she was kind of, a lot of people kind of perceived her as riding shotgun with Marie-Philippe Poulin for a lot of the World Championship games and things like that. But especially with a team like Toronto that, right out of the draft, people were looking at them and they thought they had some really interesting qualities and whatnot, but they were flat out the gate, with the star power of what we thought we would see from Sarah Nurse and Natalie Spooner herself. Things were rough to start off the season with PWHL Toronto, but then they really picked up, and Natalie Spooner has been rocking a 20% shooting percentage all year, and a lot of that has been kind of juiced into the back half of the season, where she was scoring a goal per game and kind of carried Toronto into that first in the league status to be able to pick their own playoff matchup there. So,
well, and let's get to the playoffs, because we saw a big win for Minnesota last night to sort of get back into their series after Toronto, who was the number one seed going in, and listen, led by Spooner, but with some great Manitoba roots as well. I mean, Kristen Campbell's had a monster season from Brandon, and I mean, Jocelyn Larocque has been with the national team program for over a decade, has been an absolute horse on the blue line, and she's flourishing as well. Tell us about this first round series against Minnesota, and is Toronto the team to beat right now as we kind of look at where things are in the semis?
Yeah, Toronto has really kind of come out of the woodwork to end the season. A Nashville Predators-esque run to close things off. They had some really strong performances from a lot of their players. You mentioned Jocelyn Larocque, her and Renata Faster, one of, if not the best defensive pairing in this entire league. So they've been carrying that team. And then also just the fact that they're able to kind of deploy more of a top nine sort of status. Jessie Comfer is their third line center, and she's, one of the stronger players in this matchup, and she's playing third line minutes, right? Because you have so much star power up top. So they really have some good players that have kind of pulled together, and they also have some really strong coaching in Troy Ryan. So like you said and kind of alluded to, yeah, this is fully the team to beat. Minnesota, on the other hand, is a team that really fell off near the end of the season. I think I read somewhere that they have only one, well, now two because of this playoff win, but win since the beginning of March or something like that. Granted, there was some time off there for the Worlds, but they lost quite a few games to close out the season. Players like Taylor Heisey, who was the first overall draft pick of the PWHL, has had like 3 or 4 goals in the last little stretch when other players have been racking up the double digits and things like that. Kendall Coyne Schofield, Grace Unwinkel, those players have fallen off a little bit, and they've had some rocky goaltending. So, Minnesota was able to eke out a win yesterday. I'm really happy for them. I think, it's good to see competitive playoff series and whatnot, but I do think kind of PWHL Toronto probably has this one in the bag, as a lot of other people are saying as well, and they'll probably be the team to beat depending on who comes out of that Boston-Montreal series.
Well, and speaking of that Boston-Montreal series, what was it? Triple overtime in the last game. And look, we were DMing the game sheet of time on ice, absolutely insane. I mean, a couple players going over 60 minutes in that game. But when I think of, and this is one of the things that I think they did so well, and I'm not sure how this all worked out, but it was obviously a priority for them to establish stars that had local ties. And listen, you've got two of the best in the game over the past decade, Marie-Philippe Poulin in Montreal, Hilary Knight in Boston. I mean, kind of taking that USA-Canada rivalry to the pros. And this has been a really, really tight series up until this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the fact that you can see that Montreal is down 2-0 to Boston here makes it maybe look a little bit more lopsided than it is. But yeah, we've had two overtime games there. We have a third game coming up tonight that's going to be really, really fun to watch. Yeah, like you said, I think, Aaron Ambrose had 60 some minutes and whatnot, but Montreal really leaned on their stars in that one. They had their top pairing played. They had, I think, 6 players playing over 10 minutes. They had 6 players with under 10 minutes of ice time in that game or something like that, which is super goofy. It's giving Cole Perfetti at the end of a Jets game there playing 2 minutes in the third period kind of thing. Like, it was very, whereas Boston, which Courtney Kessel's kind of mantra all year has been playing a pretty even lineup. Boston, I think they had 1 player in the top 12 of scoring in the entire league this year, or something like that, if not even more, less than that. Like, they're a pretty even, well-rounded team, and they had a lot less, individual performances that had to be put on some of their skaters and whatnot. But Aaron Frankel, their goaltender, has made, I think it's 109 saves over the course of the first 2 games in this series, which is absolutely blasphemous. I am just in awe of her, and she's been able to help, Boston secure the stability they need in order to force those games to overtime and eventually take them home.
So Montreal needs to win tonight in Boston to extend this series. And let's face it, as a Canadian hockey fan, seeing how well this league has been supported, knowing the stars on, all of the teams, I think you could say Toronto-Boston would be great for the league, interest on both sides. But man, Toronto-Montreal, I honestly think that they would be packing both the Scotiabank Arena and the Bell Center, which would be phenomenal for the league. But I mean, right now, I don't think this league can go wrong with a finals matchup, considering the talent of the teams. And listen, bottom line is, for your first year, the way all 4 of the remaining teams in it, including the Minnesota team, has been supported by their fans all season long.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of crazy to think. So at the beginning of January, so for those of you who don't know, I sit on an advisory board for the PWHL. I meet with some of their team once a month or so and stuff like that. It's more on the fan advisory side. So we talk about kind of what the fan reaction is to things. And it's a really, really good group of people. We have a nice active group chat, and everyone's always talking about all the fun ideas they have and all these things. And, we were really pushing the group chat. Everyone's saying, oh my goodness, PWHL Minnesota home opener, like, this is about to set a record. I ended up taking the drive 8 hours with my family. We went down kind of spur of the moment. We decided at lunch, and then we ended up leaving after work that day on a Friday to go down. And we were there to watch the PWHL set a record, 13,000 people watching a professional women's hockey game. I think that record has been broken 4 other times this season already, or something ridiculous like that. Like, things just the bar keeps raising. The quality of hockey is really good. The community is just kind of feeding off of each other, and it's snowballing, and seeing all the support that comes from corporate partners, and seeing these really big brand names partnering with this league, and then seeing, young fans, older fans, other sports leagues fans, other professional women's fans, so many different areas are kind of intersecting to just create such an incredible hype around this league and excitement that everyone just kind of feels like jumping on the hype train. We know how it feels to kind of get on board, jump on the bandwagon. It's not a bandwagon around a team right now. It's around a league. Everywhere you go, every single game, there's fantastic environment, and it's really, really exciting.
Well, it's great for the sport. And listen, women's sports, I think, is in a great place right now. I mean, on the sports betting a show I do over on Edmonton Sports Talk, we spent 10 minutes today talking about Caitlin Clark props for her debut for the Indiana Fever today, and just how the star power of her and the growth of the women's NCAA tournament and what that is doing right now for the WNBA. So it's all good. Now back to hockey, though. We got to figure out who is in the finals. But you're going to be hosting a little event to kick off the first ever PWHL final down at Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke. By the way, folks, give them a follow at Next Door WPG. and we'll have more information on that. We'll let you know on it. But figured what a perfect person, a perfect way to get this going. Morgan and Amber from Good Neighbor, former hockey players themselves. So they've been playing all of the games right now. If you are someone that wants to go out and have a couple and watch the semis right now, they're playing them with sound throughout the week right now. But looking forward to welcoming some friends in and supporters of the P-Dub to kick off game 1 of the first ever championship series.
Yeah, I am so fired up. I was saying it's a little bit stressful for someone like me who likes to plan their calendar 6 to 8 weeks in advance. Right now, I kind of just have like a big block of like open evenings right now because I'm like, we got to find out when this game is going to be because, we could know as soon as even tomorrow because, the Montreal-Boston series could end tonight if Boston takes this one home and then PWHL Toronto just needs another win. But then that one could be wrapped up. Everything will be finished up by the end of the week at the absolute latest. So we'll see sometime next week when those games are going to be. And yeah, like I said, we're going to head down to next door. We're going to have a fun little event. Think about the Kenny and Rennie vibe from yesterday, but maybe a little bit less yelling and a little bit more hearing at the end of the night. We'll see, but we'll have audio on, watching some good hockey. They had some fantastic commentary in a lot of these games. I'm hoping they'll get Cheryl Pounder and Kenzie Lalonde to do the coverage for the final series because they've been doing the Montreal-Boston one, and they are just the most fantastic dynamic duo. They are my Gord Miller and Ray Ferraro. They're just fantastic. So I'm really hoping to see a bunch of you down there. We'll obviously post lots of details and things like that once that schedule gets finalized and we can get that all set up. But it's going to be a super fun community event and kind of fun to be there to witness history. First ever World Cup that's going to be handed out at the end of that series. So you can say you were there with a bunch of other hockey fans to watch the first game of that final series.
That'll be great. Fill people in on your socials, gang. You can give Lyss a follow just for some great hockey talk, some takes throughout the year, but also information on this once we have a little more finalized time and date for game number 1 of the championship series.
Yeah, absolutely. You can usually catch me on Twitter. That's kind of my most popular platform where I spend probably the most of my time. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I had more screen time on LinkedIn than on Twitter over the course of the week. So that was pretty
Coming
upsetting
out of school,
for me.
just grinding, getting ready to go.
Yeah, no, but I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Lyss Houde. I know the handles in the description of the chat as well. But as far as content that I kind of make outside of that, mostly on TikTok now, my handle is Chell, as in like how people talk about the video game, Chell Chit Chat. That's kind of where I make a lot of my videos, try and get engaged with more of like the Gen Z, younger female audience type of thing to sort of be more engaging with talking about how to get involved in sports, trying to explain some things without judgment, because I'm a firm believer that, if you can't explain something in really simple terms, you probably don't understand it that well yourself either. So sometimes people need to have that voice in order to kind of lower the barriers of entry to becoming a fan of things. And I love when people become hockey fans. It's so fun for me to watch people develop and grow into their fandom. So that's what I like to do on there. So you can also follow me on there.
Hey, listen, great chat, Lyss. Cannot wait to see you and the gang down there. And again, folks, I mean, for any supporters or the people that are into the PWHL, everybody's welcome, particularly for you, for any of you women that are out there. So many great things coming out of this first season. The one thing we'd miss is maybe getting people together. And again, Morgan and Amber, huge supporters of women's hockey, so they wanted to do this. It's going to be great to have you on board on this. And we will certainly look forward to having another chat on WST with you in the future. Thanks so much for jumping on today, Lyss, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you guys.
Great convo. There is Lyss Houde. You can give her a follow again on Twitter at Lyss, LYSSHOUDE on Twitter. And hopefully you can join us down at next door for that first game of the PWHL Championship Series. I guess it could happen as soon as this weekend, maybe early next week. And bottom line is, early next week is going to be bananas. We've got an opening day at Assiniboia Downs, and Mike mentioned that they're going to be heading down to the world famous Assiniboia Downs kickoff press conference, which is the most well-attended media event of the year every year. Because the incredible chefs behind the food and beverage at ASD are forking out the best the best spread that any of us see all year long. The good news is, though, that anyone can get in on that spread. An amazing world famous prime rib buffet every night of live racing. You can make reservations to get a table in the clubhouse. You can spend the evening there betting on the ponies. They'll come right to your table as you graze at that incredible buffet. And again, opening night is next Monday. You got Monday and Tuesday next week, Monday and Tuesday the following week. And then we are into the season Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. all week long through Labor Day. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Remis and I will be going head-to-head with our favorite picks right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hey, if you're looking for a great spot to watch the Oilers and Canucks tonight, as well as the Bruins try and stave off elimination, head on down to your local Boston Pizza, your playoff home for fans to get together. They've got the brand new playoff menu with the wing flights, the Sicilian square footer pizza, the jalapeno popper dip, and great contests, including your chance to win a grand prize of a trip for two to the Stanley Cup final. It doesn't get any better than that. Tonight and throughout the playoffs, make it Boston Pizza when you gather with fans to cheer on whoever you're backing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And of course, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. Quick Breezy Bend report. For golf, tomorrow's our big day on the Lock Shop. It's major week. We will be making our picks. And then tomorrow on WST, Jeff Feinberg is going to be joining us. Can't not go into a major without having a Feinberg visit on WST. And the big news today, heading into the tournament, is sort of an off-course thing. Rory McIlroy and his wife filing for divorce today in Florida, 2 days before the PGA Championship starts. Of course, Rory's the second favorite behind Scottie Scheffler. Scottie Scheffler just had a baby. So you've got the favorite with baby swag rolling in and the second favorite with divorce swag rolling in. What an interesting matchup that is going to be. The field is amazing. They've invited a bunch of the top live guys. The course is incredible. So we'll break all that down tomorrow. But in the meantime, Breezy Bend's looking real good, and this rain is going to make it even better in the coming days. If you're thinking about getting more information on maybe making Breezy your long-term golfing home for you and your family, one of Manitoba's top private clubs, beautiful facility, course, clubhouse, more improvements coming on every year, best patio around as well. Go to breezybend.ca or give our pal Corey Johnson a call over at the golf course for more information on that. And also a great place to host a wedding if you are getting hitched soon. All right, and as I guess I mentioned earlier right off the bat, congratulations to our boys, the Goldeyes. Big win yesterday to get off the schneid. Very tough team in Cleburne they were playing against. And it all just finally exploded to the tune of a 16-0 victory. And how about that, Reem? I mean, the Goldeyes had all that bad luck, and they were just losing close games, one-run games. Well, they took care of the final two games of the series. 16-0 yesterday and 9-0 today. Very nice end to a six-game series that didn't start out very well for the visitors.
Yeah, I think last year, was a rough season. They came in with a new manager and remaking a lot of the team. Max Murphy came back. So, I mean, they had a couple close games and just exploded yesterday for that big win. So we're looking forward to seeing the Fish return here for the home opener. But yeah, always starting out that, lengthy series in Texas. But I mean, have to be impressed with some of the turnarounds so far.
Well, I'm really happy for Logan Watkins, who's been with us on a couple of occasions on the program. Really bright young manager, former member of the Chicago Cubs. I mean, he had to come in and really remake a club that was very disappointing last year. Things did not work out with Greg Taggart in the way that he handled things. And listen, he got a raw deal in Cleburne, of all places. New owners bought the club. They'd made the playoffs the last couple seasons when he was at the helm. And they had their own guy and wanted to go a different direction, and he took the Goldeyes job. We knew they were going to be up against it in these first few games as a couple players are still arriving with the Goldeyes. But to get those two big wins in the fashion that they did, great for Logan, great for the squad. Hopefully they can carry that into a weekend series. And most importantly, for next week when the Fish are finally back at the newly named Blue Cross Park. Go to goldeyes.com for all your information on the upcoming season. And as I said, hopefully by next week, we'll have a confirmed date for the next big get-together of the community, if you will. Goldeyes patio party at one of the two new patio decks by Craft Beer Corner. You can find out more on renting those as well at goldeyes.com. All right, let's get to the Coolbet lines tonight. And we got two big ones. We'll start it off with the undercard, if you will. The Boston Bruins and the Florida Panthers going at it. No Brad Marchand, back in Florida. Panthers one game away from moving on to the next round. And I don't know. I think Boston's up against it tonight, Remo. Not surprisingly, the Florida Panthers are a pretty big favorite, minus 194. Bruins plus 163. I do think it is curtains tonight. Kind of said last round, regardless of who won that Saturday night Game 7, I thought Florida would handle either Toronto or Boston, and it's really gone that way. But, obviously this series has been shaken up by the loss of Brad Marchand at the hands, or the hand, if you will, of Sam Bennett.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how Boston was doing it all year, and missing your top guy and Brad Marchand, that's certainly tough. Florida, I think they've been dominant throughout the season. 3 very solid lines. They're getting elite goaltending. It's funny, it was only a couple years ago. I was like, this Bobrovsky contract is terrible. He stinks. And, they went to the Cup final last year and conference final potentially this year. So I agree with you. I'm on Florida. I think Boston's had a great season, but, Florida just knows they have a lot of playoff-style guys that you want, like Sam Bennett, who I didn't really like last year, and he's kind of doing the same stuff this year.
Serious pain in the ass. Yeah. Although I would love to have him on my team in the playoffs.
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk as well, healthy. Good for Florida, and looking forward to seeing. Man, we're gonna have 2 great conference final. I think no matter who it's gonna be, if it is leaning towards Panthers, Rangers, Carolina could come back. Either way, it's a couple great series.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I was really hoping we were going to get Edmonton, Colorado. Not that I cheer for either of those teams, but I wanted to see McKinnon and McDavid go head-to-head again. That doesn't look very likely right now. Certainly, the Avalanche are up against it, and, in a brutal situation with the loss of Nichushkin and losing the last 2 at home, down 3-1 heading to Dallas. And moving on to Game 2 tonight, Reem, it's the Canucks and Oilers. What'd you think when you heard that Stewie Skins is going to be on the bench tonight? Calvin Pickard going for the Oilers as a minus 189 favorite. I'll say I think the Canucks are very much undervalued by the odds right now at plus 159. Oilers are in a bit of a jam right now. They're splitting up McDavid and Draisaitl to start the game, and they're going with the backup tonight in a game that, listen, I know 3-1 is 3-1, and we've seen teams come back for it before, but this is a game you got to have it. And also fascinated by the response early on in the game, considering how Game 3 ended.
Yeah, Carson Soucy getting the 1-game suspension. I think they're desperate. They're going with Pickard over Skinner. Going to the backup. Skinner was so good in the regular season, especially during that win streak, but just hasn't been the same goalie in the playoffs going back the last couple years. The numbers support that. They're like, hey, could he really be much worse than what we've getting? The Canucks are scoring on these just shots from distance that are going right through him. So I kind of don't blame him. I think they're in a tough spot. They're riding their top guys a little too much. They're not getting any scoring from some of their bottom guys. He signed Corey Perry to come in, for the playoffs. That's because he's got 0 points in the playoffs. But if you're counting on Corey Perry at this stage of his career to be a key contributor, maybe you got bigger problems. So Vancouver, I think, is in the driver's seat. Plus 159. It's certainly tempting with Edmonton. Desperate going to the backup. But look, they have Connor McDavid, and if they've got a couple normal saves, they would be the ones leading, but it hasn't been that way.
I guess my take on all of this is that the Edmonton Oilers have better players, and the Vancouver Canucks are a better team. And we're seeing that right now, the way that they're playing. And again, this goes back to our conversations on the coach. Listen, the job that Rick Tocchet has done of molding this team in his mindset. I mean, they're just night and day as opposed to what they were last year. They're incredibly tenacious. They're tough. They're a pain in the ass to play against. And they've been taking liberties with the Oilers. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That, to me, is the most interesting part of tonight's game, Reem. Like, what happens in the first 5 minutes of this game? Like, does Evander get in and mix it up? Does he drop the gloves with someone? Do they start taking shots at Quinn Hughes and at Elias Pettersson and at JT Miller along the likes of what the Oilers have been handling from Vancouver the last little bit? I really don't know the answer. There's not a ton of muscle in that Oilers lineup. But I don't think there's any doubt that they've sort of been pushed around by Vancouver. And I think they do sort of need to answer, because if that continues, I don't see them winning the series.
Yeah, I agree with you. In Vancouver, they've brought it. Guys like Zadorov. You saw, Joshua landing hits as well. Ian Cole's tough on defense. Carson Soucy's a big guy. He'll be suspended. So I think Vancouver looked at what the Jets did to Edmonton and when the Jets swept them, and trying to do the same thing. And I agree with you. Edmonton doesn't have that type of guys in their lineup, but got to have some response here. And we'll see if they do decide to mix it up, or that was last game and they're just focused on, winning the hockey game instead of any extra BS. And I do have to say, Nikita Zadorov has really endeared, really gained a lot of fans with some of his comments along with his play, joking that there was nothing to do in Edmonton, and now saying, they had to protect, McDavid by giving Soucy the suspension. So we'll.
Zadorov's given F level is low, very, very low. Just seeing a couple updates from the gang in chat. PLD, remember him? It's cookie night right now. He just scored to make it 6-1 for Canada in the second period. And then Leslie Mitchnick mentioned Canada just gave up 2 quick goals and they're only up 6-3 now. By the way, shout out to our pal Dan Robertson, who's calling these games. And that's, I guess, why he got called up to do the World Championships. And that's why my pal Dustin Nielsen is calling the WHL Championship, which obviously is underway right now. Speaking of which, let me just see here if we do have Western Hockey League. Yes, tonight, the Moose Jaw Warriors, who were greeted by the entire town, it seemed, lining the streets when the team came back. Dusty Ice was on one of those buses, took a video of it. They're up 2-0. There it is, -128 for Moose Jaw tonight. Portland Winterhawks -108 on the road if you want to get in on that. NBA playoffs tonight. 2 great series that are tied at 2. Pacers and Knicks. Home team has won every game. Knicks are at home as a slight -116 favorite. T-Wolves and Nuggets. The road team has won every game. Nuggets back from the dead with those 2 wins in the Twin Cities. The Joker, the MVP in the Nuggets, along with Canadian Jamal Murray, -182 faves tonight against the T-Wolves, who are +153. I did put together a little Lock Shop exclusive today with Jake. We like the Panthers puck line. We were going to go regulation. We figured regulation, the other team probably empties the net. You get that extra goal. So we got Florida by 2, and the Canucks Oilers over 6.5. total. That one we put in at +350. They kindly boosted it to +400. So 4-1 right now. Hit that in the Coolbet exclusives. And again, you can check out all the odds for the PGA Championship. We're going to get to those tomorrow with Jeff Feinberg. But Scotty Scheffler, Baby Swag, +450. Rory McIlroy, Divorce Swag, +775. You know what? I should actually, too, I'm going to do quickly a PGA Tour DraftKings contest. So if you go in any of our DraftKings, keep an eye out. We'll do a $3 PGA event and see if we can get that filled up moving forward. So, Reem, what do you think about that? Florida by 2 and over in the Edmonton-Vancouver game.
Yeah, I like it. Seen a lot of goals in that series. I think Florida close it out, maybe get an empty netter at the end. So I agree with you, Huss, on that lock shop partner parlay.
One other thing I should mention, and I kind of said this to Lyss when we were talking about the women's hockey. Caitlin Clark debuts in the WNBA tonight. I haven't checked the 2, but I'm sure it'll be on television. And there are 6 different Caitlin Clark specials as well in the Coolbet exclusives, along with about 10 from the National Hockey League. I don't think there's a lot of NBA. So yeah, all the listen, you can get chalk, Panthers and Oilers both to win boosted to plus 140. Whole bunch of other options. So always before you bet, check the exclusives. They always give you a nice boost. If it's something you were going to get anyways, you'll always get a better number there. And the PGA Championship specials are also up right now. All sorts of neat ones. We'll go through that tomorrow in the lock shop and tomorrow on the Coolbet Lines segment. Fun show today, Remo. It really felt like it flew by.
Yeah, I mean, these playoff series, I think, really intriguing. A lot of good storylines, a lot of controversy in that Edmonton-Vancouver. I said to you, reminds me of when the Jets played Montreal and you had that
all the fans losing their minds.
Yeah, Scheifele hit on Jake Evans, which brought a lot of opinions out. I think you saw a lot of that yesterday with the Carson Soucy one game and fines handed out, maybe some fines not handed out. I know there were other cross-checks there that seemed to go unnoticed. So we got that. The Jets head coach watch. A lot of people, a lot of people tuned in for that. We're in the insider scene where, Craig Berube's having a meeting here in Winnipeg, an in-person meeting. Oh no, it's a Zoom meeting now. Updates Bank Cervelli. So I'm hoping we get more nuggets. I don't know. Elliot Friedman did say with Jeff Merrick today, the Jets are still going through their process. The Jets, very tight-lipped about.
I'm also reporting the Jets are going through their process right now. That is
very, very tight-lipped about what's been going on. So there's a lot of topics, and we had Nichushkin as well.
What a mess! What a mess that is. Very tough for the Avalanche, and tough for the player. He might be on the verge of, having a addiction or whatever it is going on behind the scenes. Cost him a good chunk of his NHL career. He's 6 months suspended without pay. And then we'll see whether he's reinstated. And then what happens with the Avalanche? I think you could tell by the comments of some of the players. I'm not sure it'll be as easy as to come back this time as it has been the last two. That's going to do it for us. Tomorrow, we'll have much more on the Jets coaching search. Get ready for the PGA Championship, Winnipeg Blue Bomber Training Camp, and more. Make sure to join us at 1 o'clock live on YouTube. All you podcast listeners, thanks so much for making us a part of your day. And thank you to the wonderful family of Winnipeg Sports Talk sponsors that allows us to do this in this space every day. Enjoy the games tonight. I like Florida. I'm not as sure about Edmonton. I hope Edmonton wins just so we've got at least a game 6. And this would be a great series to go 7. It should be fun. Lots of great sports on tonight. We'll talk about it all tomorrow. Continue the conversation right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Thanks to Lyss Houde. Thanks to Mike McIntyre and Justin Dunk for jumping on today. And as always, thanks to the brains of the operation, Michael Remis, for making it all happen. Gang, hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.